Okay, go live. Okay, for people who are joining this live stream, we are doing some incremental language development design discussion, and looks like we have a simple agenda, but those are always the ones that turn out to be the most complicated. Okay, let's start off with this first one: date object granularity and default time zone.
So this was spawned by a question you had over the weekend about why, if I do date object of 2002 or some year granularity, why is there a time zone showing up by default?
Yep.
And so what we discussed a little bit, Jose and I, is that there's a couple of ways to potentially address that. And one of them that we discussed in the past is saying there's a certain granularity threshold already within the system where if you have different time zones, we still consider the dates equal. Today with a time zone of 0 is considered the same day and still equal to today with a time zone of -5 or +5. And so what we were thinking is we can...
What about -18 or -22 or something?
Yeah, so right now the threshold we have with that is that there is an internal switch we basically have for doing comparisons that say if the granularity is at least this, then we're basically time zone agnostic. It doesn't matter what your time zone is. We will do the comparison looking at the date part. And once you factor in an hour or something smaller than that, then we need to account for time zone. But what we had been doing, at least up until we started playing around with this yesterday, was saying that your default $time zone gets inserted in the date object, even if we're not looking at it for some granularities.
Right, and which is a bad thing, because that means that, I don't know, you're putting a time zone into the, into some historical year.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make any sense. And you end up concluding, yeah, go ahead. So what do we think we want to have happen?
So as far as Jose and I were talking about it, there's sort of two different paths. One would be to say we have some granularity at which we switch between saying a time zone should be included and a time zone shouldn't, and we can populate that with time zone is none, for example, so that, if we need to resolve it, a time zone for a specific operation that needs an instant, we already have a precedence of using $time zone when we need to. But if you're in Iceland and generate the date 2002 and I'm in Alaska and generate it, the expert form will be the same. So that's sort of what this example here is. What we tried putting in prototype just to play around is if we change, basically have that switch at the day granularity is the coarsest granularity where we leave the time zone as none. And once you have an hour or smaller, we need to insert the time zone so that we know what you're referring to.
All right. Okay. So, right. Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Anything down to days, there's no time zone.
Mm-hmm. And you can still explicitly set it if for some reason you need to. If I explicitly say time zone goes to time zone, in a day granular object, we will insert that time zone because you said to, but otherwise we would have the default be that it's none.
Okay. Are you going to have a settable parameter for that or not? I don't think you need to, because I think it's pretty obvious that you do not want a time zone above granularity of days.
Right. And it corresponds to the fact that when we typeset these, if it's day or larger, we don't typeset the time zone even if it's there.
Well, there may be computations in which this is needed. Imagine somebody worrying about when to celebrate New Year, depending on location, etc. So they may want to specify what they mean by year with a time zone.
Sorry, say that again. New Year. What?
New Year's, yes. So that's some exact
then
moment.
They should say January 1st, shouldn't they? Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying,
I mean, if it matters when something changes from one year to another, because you are worrying about your celebration of New Year, then you may need that information in the date object. So the original motivation, and that's why the time zone has been there for years, is to specify uniquely the period corresponding to each date object. But it's true what you are saying, that if you have dates in dated or in associations, etc., then having the time zone may be problematic.
Okay, so wait a minute. If I want to get the very beginning of the year 2002, how do I do it in the system?
Well, that's a separate question. So
I don't think it is a separate question, because I think that if I give this, that's the year, right? So how do I get the very beginning of that year, the moment at which that year begins?
If you said
the
date
bounds.
object of percent, or yeah, date object of percent comma instant would turn it into an instant, and our precedence is always that when you instantiate a date object, it goes to its beginning instant.
Okay, and that's picking up a time zone from dollar time zone.
Yep.
Okay, but if I had given a time zone here, if I had said time zone 10 or something, then this instant would have been, okay, so this seems fine. Yeah.
Right. So it's totally fine to change our default. So what I was saying is that sometimes the knowledge of the time zone is needed.
Even when the granularity is above a day?
I think so.
Give me the example again.
Yeah, so imagine somebody is trying to find whether we have changed or not to a different year, and this depends on the location. Are people in Japan already in the new year or not?
Thinking. But that requires going to an instant, having a year granularity. So you're saying, if I say, let's say 2021, okay, and then I say now less than that. Oh, I can't do that. Well, how do I do that?
It's because it's overlapping, and so comparisons here will look and say 2021 is a coarse granular object. If that was, 2020.
But notice here this Gregorian -4 craziness going on here.
That's typesetting, yes. I don't know. Do you know, Nick, why this doesn't typeset?
It's something to do with the message forms.
No, I understand that, but why is it even saying -4? Why, I thought you said you just changed this to not have a time zone when it's a when it's a year level granularity date.
Well, so there's two approaches for that.
Sorry, in the X kernel. So Nick changed this in the X kernel.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's two approaches for that. One would be to explicitly say time zone is none, or the other would be to basically omit the parameter in the input form.
I would prefer to omit the parameter.
And the same with calendar type, I'm guessing. That, if you don't specify, if it's a non-Gregorian date, we'll have the calendar type in there, but if it's a Gregorian date, it doesn't need to have Gregorian carried around in it.
I think so. I think you drop Gregorian. I mean, that's the default.
Yeah.
I can't see why you would include Gregorian. I think it's just unnecessary fluff. That's kind of, I don't see it. Okay, so in this case, now the time zone here, this is going to be, you say, why is it still -4? Well, maybe I just have the wrong build.
Yeah, we just put it in yesterday, so it may have.
Okay, fine.
Oh, yeah, that's older. Okay.
Yeah, way old. Gosh, why do I have such an old one? Okay, we got some comments on the live stream here from P. Winkler complaining that this is not the correct result.
That is true. Part of that is the heuristic date parser is complicated and is not well set up for parsing time zones. So we don't have a date format in there. So there are improvements we're making to handle cases like that. And 12.3 has a lot of improvements in date string processing, but the automatic time zone parser is complicated and has a
what I don't even know what this means. Does the Z represent Zulu time or something?
Yeah, Zulu. So it's a standard ISO 8601 notation for date time that includes Z for GMT.
Okay, so the complaint is that
it's giving it back in your local time zone with the time unchanged. So it should either be detecting that it is GMT and giving.
Yeah, I understand. So that's a bug.
Yeah.
Time zone is ignored in dates in. Oh, I see. Date object returns the wrong result. Yes, we agree. It's a bug. From date string is also ignoring time zone. Even if I tell it time zone 0, that seemed to work. Oh, it's ignoring it in the parse, but it is, I'm able to force overlay that time zone.
Yeah.
Surely this can't be that hard to fix. I mean, isn't this a specific case for the ISO specification?
Yeah, it is a specific case, and we have improvements for specific formula or for specific date formats, but for general heuristic date parsing, it's more complicated because there are lots of different time zone notations. We can improve it for specific date formats, and we're working on extending that and improving performance across the board. We've picked up a decent bit of speed up for 12.3, but every extra bit of complication we add in, particularly in the heuristic parser, has big performance hits potentially.
Right. So, yeah, right. But I agree, by the way, this is the correct result here. I mean, the typesetting is ugly, but the result is correct. If it's overlapping, you cannot resolve it.
Right.
Yeah, that follows our general interval comparison algorithms.
Fair enough. Let's see. Yeah, a comment from Eli about the beginning of the new year is obviously a dynamic thing around the world. And even we now have, right, is what is it called? Geo-orientation data, right? What should I put in here?
I see. You can say, I don't know, some date and then day duration, something like that. So that, I mean, it rounds in the typesetting, but if you do input form or day duration excess.
I'm gonna try something. I'm just curious.
Yep.
Date object. Okay, so now if I say day duration for a year, what's it going to do?
Oh, I have no idea. I guess it will choose the first date.
Okay, so if I
yeah, it doesn't average or anything like that.
Does it know the future?
It has some predictions, but they are very, I mean, yeah, it has some general trend in the sense of there is a parabolic general trend.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, so the variations are in the order of milliseconds. If you say day duration excess, then you get, yeah.
Is that because it wasn't measured much in the early part of the century?
No, because these values were measured very precisely since the 60s or 50s with the atomic clocks. Before, there were just some indications. Mm-hmm. And so the data is less precise. And if we go thousands of years, there is just a parabolic trend.
Which is caused by what?
By the slowing down of the rotation of the Earth.
Why is it parabolic? Why isn't it linear?
So the duration of the day is linear. The parabolic trend is the difference between atomic time and universal time. Yes, I was thinking of something that's different. This is linear. The day duration is linear. It's increasing linearly.
Why is there this period 1? I think it's period 1 oscillation here. I'm just curious.
There are several periods here. Some related to the moon, some related to the day.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's. I mean, in the examples in the orientation data page, there are nicer graphs. If you go down in the applications, I think. Yeah.
Huh,
So
the day is getting shorter.
exactly. The day in recent years it's getting shorter, but this is just some sort of local effect.
Huh.
The parabolic trend is sorry, the global trend is linear, increasing. I think there is a graph further down.
And you still expect us to get as much work done.
There's not as many seconds in the day. Yeah, right. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's how the rotation of the axis of rotation is moving with respect to geographic north.
Well, interesting stuff. Okay. All right. Is there anything more to say about this?
So just to confirm, so do you agree on removing the output, the third and fourth arguments in output?
Yes, I do. In the case where they are default, Gregorian and none.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sandra just put this in the live stream. What happened here? Oh, terrible, terrible.
And it's polar plot.
Polar plot doesn't seem to have, so the claim would be if I did list plot here,
Oh, I see.
get nice error bars.
Mm-hmm.
But the polar plot doesn't know that it's supposed to give. What the heck should it give?
Exactly. I'm thinking about that.
The polar plot is giving, these are the angles in radians, presumably. Is that right?
Wedges.
No, wait a second. What is this? I don't even understand what this is.
So I think in polar plot, these are angles. I don't remember. I never remember what this R of theta or
radii,
theta of r.
equally spaced in radii. Okay,
Right.
so this should just give radial error bars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Right? In that direction. It's more complicated if there's both a theta and r, which are both the rounds, in which case it should just give the standard double error bar type story.
Yeah, but tilted. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the bug. Okay. Should we jump into WFR candidates?
Yes. So this time there is a difference. So in the previous iteration, we sorted things by rank, but this time we have selected similarly like by areas.
By the way, people include pointing out the bug is a serious problem for the import function for the dates. We'll look at it. See if I don't know whether we'll get it in for 12.3. If not, we can at least provide a fix in the function repository. Something we haven't actually done, but it's something we perfectly well could do for a point issue like this. So Nick, I think that's for you. Okay, sorry,
yeah.
please go ahead. This is
Yeah, I was saying that these 36 functions are all say language related. So we have tried this time to separate functions by area. So in some other ILD meeting, we will have visualization functions, and then we will have that with us.
All right, fine. Okay. Symmetric difference. Don't we have a similar construct for regions?
I think so.
What is it called?
Don't remember, but I think we have it.
It's called region symmetric difference.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, well, seems like a good thing to have. Let's see, what does it mean when you have a union and intersection of lists? So it's complement of union. So you can have any number of
It's
objects.
the union of the pairwise complements.
So it's ordered in some way.
I mean, think about union and all them. What do you mean by ordered? They all sort, if that's what you mean.
No, I mean that the order of arguments matters, does it?
Actually, that's a good point. I had
No,
forgotten.
I don't think it matters.
Too.
No, I don't think it matters either. I thought,
Now, the related function that could be also quite useful is when you want to compare the two sets and you want to know which elements are in the first but not in the second, and which are in the second but not in the first.
Oh yeah, it's my function in the function repository. All
What's it called?
compliments.
Oh, you have already?
Yeah, I called it all compliments. And I have one of the best satirical examples. There somewhere. See, it's all compliments.
Yeah, this
Oh, I
operation I
see.
use a
I
lot.
see.
I have two sets and I want to understand their difference.
so wait a minute. This is n sets here. So what am I seeing here? I'm seeing the things which are
Unique to each one.
unique entirely to each one. So it's the things that are not in the union of all of them. The things in each one that are not in. No, wait a minute.
Right.
What are you
I mean, I use this with just two sets mostly, but it works with many.
The description could have been worded a little better, but it's the union minus the intersection for symmetric difference.
Isn't that only the case for exactly two?
No, I think it's for more than two, judging from.
Because I thought the symmetric difference for more than two was the elements that are in an odd number of the list.
There's different interpretations of which
I
that's
see.
one that's viable. I don't think that's what was implemented, though. I vaguely remember we had some back and forth with George about this and went with it as is. I'd have to look at the code, though. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe that is what it does.
Okay, so hold on. I'm trying to understand what this thing should be called. So look, symmetric difference seems well defined and presumably agrees with the way that region symmetric difference works. Yes? So
Oh no, it doesn't. There's a separate function repository entry called multi-set symmetric difference, and that corresponds with region symmetric difference.
Oh, for goodness sake, what's going on?
So multi-set symmetric difference is the one that counts or looks for the things that are in an odd number of the lists, which is what region symmetric difference does. So I guess I haven't figured out what
Oh, God.
symmetric difference is doing yet.
This seems like a mess. Let's go figure this out, okay? And I don't think if region symmetric difference is doing the even odd thing, there's no way that symmetric difference can do something different. So if there's a different operation, it's a different name. And this all complements thing, let's see. This is saying, okay, what this is saying is unique to a list, right?
Mhm.
That's what it's saying. It's something that's unique to a list.
Right. Unique elements or something could be the name.
That's not terrible.
Right. I use it a lot to find diffs. Like if I have a history of some array. And
Yes,
things are
well, maybe
added
that's a
and
better
removed.
operation for that.
Right. Things are added and removed from the array. Seeing what changed at each time step.
But it's not what changed in successive steps. It's what changed.
Well, if you do like a
special
moving
at
map,
that.
if you do like a moving map of this thing, right? I usually just use it with two things, and that's the application I use it for most. But there are other applications.
Then it's not obvious that that having a sublist, because notice that the symmetric difference here is a Verogs. And this
Right, right. It could be Verogs, certainly. And then there's an application that I put in here where you're for like metaprogramming, where you find which options for one function are not also used by another function. So you know how to parse out option specs into different sub tasks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, this does seem, yeah. I think there's a little bit more to both of these. I think there's a little bit more to, identifying pairwise unique, identifying even odd, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's several. And here's what I'd like to do. Can we get it looked at, what the image processing analogs of these are, the region analogs, et cetera, and then come back to this? Make sense?
Yep.
I mean, what I do for this all the time is first /@ split.
That's basically what the implementation is for this.
Doesn't seem like a bad function to have. I mean, it seems fairly clear what it's doing. Let's see, the sequence. What are you saying? Similar to what overlaps does? Why are you saying that?
Yeah. Yeah, this reminded me of overlaps for sequence cases, etc.
Why are you saying that?
Because rather than having a separate function in sequence cases takes this overlaps option, that controls whether you look at neighbors, etc.
Okay, but I understand, but so is this function the overlaps of some other function?
No, if you have cases that are going to return lists that contain overlapping elements, then you can control whether you want those additionally or not. So this is a bit like in the operation of delete duplicates, do you in the process look at neighbors or
yeah, I
only?
understand.
But do you only look at neighbors?
Yeah, I don't think we can get to it by an overlaps. I mean, we could get to it if we said that delete duplicates.
Yes, I'm not saying that it should be overlaps, the option. I'm saying that rather than a different function, it could be an option, some option to delete duplicates. Like adjacent only or something like that.
What else? I mean, I suppose one could imagine versions of delete duplicates that is more like an outlier deletion.
You could also have delete duplicates by, where the function takes more than one argument, like a moving map.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Always the question of, once you've deleted a duplicate, do you look at it in comparison to the next, or do you look at the one before it?
Yeah.
In particular for the by.
I think you would always just look at the original list, but right. I'm happy to be overruled. You can imagine like delete duplicates by the list, same queue, comma 2. Where 2 is saying how many things put in, the size of the map.
Right. Where delete duplicates by default would have only one, but it's a little bit weird that I see. Would have to be a Verogs. The same queue would work because it's Verogs thing.
Right. Exactly.
Delete duplicates by does seem quite useful. So if we had delete duplicates by,
we have delete duplicates by.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Does it take multiple?
No, it's just applied to each element individually. So you can do like in association, it's really, when you're comparing associations, it's really useful because you say, hash of name.
Right. Okay, so what you're proposing is if dilute duplicates by had another argument, so you could say 2 comma same Q, for example.
Right.
What would be the analog of what function is analogous to the 2? It's like partition or something. By the way, when are we going to set it up so that partition has some kind of string names?
I mean, moving map with the third argument is a window spec.
Okay, when are we going to set it up to give symbolic names like cyclic and so on for partition? Like that. Is there any good reason we haven't done that? There's deafening silence.
I'm thinking what that would mean. I mean, typically you put numbers there, so that you specify some offsets.
I know, and they're super hard to understand. And every time I look at this, it's kind of like you have to repeat the list to make it cyclic and so on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm totally fine with having these strings if they uniquely identify their corresponding numeric version.
Well, I understand. So there's a question of cyclic. Where does it begin from and things?
Right.
Although often you don't really care. You just want something cyclic. Now, I admit that this, you could be starting 5, 6, or you could be starting whatever. But I mean, right now, it takes me forever. And by the way, the documentation is not very clear on this. What's the minimal way to make a cyclic thing here? Pad with a cyclic with repetition of elements, but that's the pad list. What about this? I mean, isn't the obvious thing? Well, I admit, look, this is the thing I want all the time, these cyclic partition things. And I do admit that it's not completely obvious what this should be.
So if you say 1, 2,1, for example.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
No, so but the third argument is about offsets. So it's going to repeat in the results elements. So if we say 2,1, it's going to return 4, 5, 5, 6, which is not what we want here. What you want is a result 4, 5, 6, 4.
Indeed. Yes, indeed. I mean, look, there are 2 things we've considered here. One is a wrapper for lists, which indicates that they're cyclic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think we should still consider, because I think they'll be useful in part and many other places. I mean, we could imagine a cyclic list construct where this would just work.
Yes. But the partition, if we have a cyclic list, it formally will have infinite length. So how to partition it, it's not clear.
That's a fair point. Well, I mean, yeah, I understand, especially if, for example, the weird case would be I have a non-commensurate number here relative to the length. So it's going to flip around. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I admit that's kind of complicated. I do think this is worth thinking about. Can we put this on a future agenda, cyclic list and cyclic partition?
Yep.
Maybe cyclic partition should be the, yeah, I agree it's not completely well defined. Okay, delete adjacent duplicates. Seems like a reasonable thing to have. Is it obvious? Wait a minute, which way round? Yes, if they're duplicates. I mean, duplicates by, it gets more complicated because it's a question, where's the representative? But delete duplicates, to delete adjacent duplicates seems well defined.
Well, you still have the question of, did I delete it already? Or do I delete it after I've used it to check its neighbor?
What do you mean? If it's adjacent duplicates, isn't it completely well defined? It's just the equivalent of first/@ split.
Well, no, I mean, if you keep deleting, suppose you have A, B, C, 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 D, E, don't you delete all of those C's?
All but one.
No, you leave one of them. You know, there's one.
I mean, all
left
but one. Sorry, you delete all but one because they were adjacent.
Yes. What's the issue?
Well, the issue is if you have something that's not, like in particular the by case, but this can happen with numbers if they're not transitive, the comparisons. You know, same queue is not always.
Well, what does
well
delete
behaved.
duplicates do?
God only knows.
Well, it has the same issue. It's got the same test.
Yeah,
Got the same issue.
I'm sure it does. Now that you mention it.
That's an interesting suggestion from Mohammed in our live stream. Please support pre-subscript and pre-superscript boxes to support actuarial notation. And some boxes to support the actuarial angle. I do not know those things. What do these things look like? Oh, wow. That's a good suggestion for some, well, first of all, for something from the function repository. I didn't know about these things at all. Duration and actuarial notation. Let me look at this. Okay, well, this looks like a terrific function repository thing. I didn't know this stuff at all. Good thing for us to have. Good thing for me to know about. I didn't know anything about this. That's a different issue. Okay, well, this seems like a good suggestion. There seems to be some kind of angle hat thing, which I'd not seen before. Yeah, actuarial angle and actuarial symbol. Well, let's make the suggestion, right? I mean, first step is let's get them into a function repository entry. And I suspect, I mean, I think these things are doable in the front end, but they may be kind of complicated. And then the question is, what is their representation in, you know, directly in the language? But first step is yeah.
Whoa, what is it? What do you have in mind that would go into the function repository? That
function that typesets some,
Okay.
you know, look, clearly we need a way to represent this thing. I don't know what that is because we don't have direct representation of actuarial constructs.
Right. I just can't see how this would be done without support from front end.
Oh, because I'm assuming that all these things can be done by various kinds of, you know, adjacent boxes.
Typesetting.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, maybe
And
so.
overlay boxes and adjustment boxes and so on. I think it probably would require adjustment boxes with font measurement that's done dynamically.
It can probably be done. There aren't a ton of people who could do it.
Right. This is very interesting. I did not know there was any such notation. Well, thank you for that. All right. Anyway, that's a note for there. Okay, should we go on here?
One minor thing. We have a duplicate free queue. Would that need an adjacent duplicate free queue?
I don't think so.
That's where you can have an overlaps option.
Overlaps is going to be incomprehensible.
No,
Okay.
the name is bad, but perhaps an option with some other name would help.
I think this function is, look, you can't have every possible function. So, delete adjacent duplicates. It's very clear what it means. Adjacent duplicate free queue, who cares? You can, I just don't think it's important.
Okay.
All right, shuffling.
So we have a bunch of shuffling stuff in the function repository, and we've already combined a bunch of them into a sort of master function just called shuffle.
In the function repository.
In the function repository that takes the type of shuffle as the final argument. So we should consider these as a family. Maybe we want them all broken up into different functions.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what they're used for exactly. I mean, there are algorithms, there are a few algorithms I'm aware of that use shuffle functions. What are they typically used for?
I think I saw the author of some of these on the live stream.
Oh yeah, Sandra is there, commenting on the fact that these are great functions. They're very nicely, look at that nice document.
Oh yeah, his diagrams are amazing.
But tell me what these are used for. Deck of cards, I know that. I mean, I think they're used for various algorithms.
It might be used for experimental designs.
Yes. We have been, I would say, inadequate in terms of experimental design kinds of, there are obviously some functions for experimental design that would be useful. Okay, let's just look ahead here at we're not going to get to too many more of these. This one I am partial to because I seem to need it so often, or something like it. George on the live stream is talking about the Fisher-Yates shuffle. Sounds very statistical. That sounds like an experimental design. It sounds to me like something where somebody will be doing, if I'm not mistaken, both. Let's see if I'm okay, there's a commentary about add code completion being useful. Oh boy, these are a lot of different things here. Well, it seems to me we've got more to study about shuffles. There's a lot of interesting things here. Okay. Oh boy. Fair enough. Look, I think we're probably not going to achieve much more right here today. So, okay. Well, we should wrap up for today, and bring these back another time.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. Thanks to
Good.
folks here. Thanks to folks on the live stream. By the way, I'm supposed to be doing another live stream about business and innovation in half an hour. But I have other things to do first, so I got to run off.